What's up, Wanna Coffee fam? It's Kai, and we are back, kicking off season 2, and things have slightly changed for us. We will have weekly contributions from strangers all over the world discussing various topics chosen by yours truly. And this is the first time these contributors have spoken to one another, so you are in for a real treat. Without further ado, here's Chris and Chris with What About Indiana?
Hi, welcome to Want a Coffee. This is Chris Rhodes,
And I'm Chris Holland.
and today we're going to be talking about the topic is what about Indiana? So, I guess my first question to you, Chris, is are you from Indiana?
I'm not. I spent 3 years there in grad school.
Oh,
I say I served 3 years in Indiana. It's one of the few places that after leaving, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to live there again.
oh, well, I am actually from Indiana, born and raised. Um, so I guess I would love to hear your thoughts or whatever on Indiana. Where in Indiana did you go to school? Purdue?
Yeah, I went to Purdue. I got my master's at Purdue.
Oh, cool. So I'm a fellow boiler as well. I did my undergrad there.
Ah,
So unfortunately,
you're,
you were not in the best part of the state.
yeah. I'm starting to understand that one.
Yeah, very flat and just nothing but cornfields up there. The further south you go, it gets a little more uh, beautiful in terms of nature, at least. Maybe not culturally so much, but
Yeah, I've been to Bloomington. Like I played shows in Bloomington, the Bluebird. Like I've been to some of the other cities.
oh,
You know, the land, the area didn't bother me. The people were most certainly not very welcoming, um,
yeah, they
which is
can be like
my
that.
and uh, it was sort of like trying to find, like I guess let me start from the top because I've lived in like 12 different cities, work in entertainment. And so I grew up in Pittsburgh. Like I grew up outside of Pittsburgh and I've lived in Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Vermont, Indiana, Texas, DC, Baltimore, and now New York City. And so I've sort of lived in the gamut of places, and very few of those I say I would be happy to live in again. And Indiana was not one of them.
Yeah,
And I think it's because the locals in the area, whether maybe it's a college town vibe or not, but they were not very welcoming to what felt like an outsider. I mean, I didn't grad student, I didn't really want to go where all the undergrads went because you don't want to see your students drunk out in the city. um,
yeah.
so I used to venture into like Lafayette, or there were times that I would go out to like, I had a friend who was a band director up in Napanee.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'd sort of venture around the state a little bit, and was not, was not, I don't know, it was always a weird vibe, and I played in a band while I was there. We traveled to like exotic locations like South Bend, and we had a giant like skinhead fight break out at a show where someone got tased and someone got crushed with a hammer, and like it was just a
Jeez.
weird, like it was a special show
Yeah.
because if we didn't play at least 15 minutes we weren't going to get paid for that gig. And so it was like this fight broke out, and so it was immediately like play something calming, great, let's play some Marley now, play it now, go go go, like play something,
Yeah.
so that if we play enough they at least have to pay us. And we ended up playing like all of like 20 minutes or something. And they're like, here, take your money, get out. It's like, jeez. It's like,
Wow.
don't be mad at us. You guys couldn't control your crowd, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a weird vibe.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
But
Oh.
you grew up there. Are you from right around that area, or are you from another part of the state?
I actually grew up just east of Indianapolis. Because Indianapolis is kind of like a perfect square shaped city. and then has like a circular interstate that runs all around it. And um, just east of it, I-70 goes from like Baltimore all the way to Utah, and
Mhm.
it runs through my hometown. And kind of grew up there. I was about 15 minutes or so from like the Indianapolis border, maybe like 30 minutes from downtown. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting kind of growing up where I grew up because it's so close to Indianapolis that if you went to the mall for anything, or a lot of times to go see a movie or something, or to go on dates when you got in high school, you were going to Indianapolis. But um, for the most part, you stayed in my hometown, which was so close to Indianapolis, but also felt like light years away because my hometown was only 10,000 ish, somewhere around there.
Wow.
And you're 15 minutes from a city of a million people, but you have 10,000 people in your hometown and you're living in like 2 or 3 decades behind the times, it felt like. And then you could easily just drive 15 minutes to like a whole nother world where, because my hometown was like all white people, and then very Republican, um, just very Fox News, Trump loving type people, and then but also a lot of Bible thumping. Forgot about that. That's the one thing I don't miss about at home back in Indiana because I don't live there now. Is I forget about like how many people are just so religious. I'm not really
Where are you
religious.
at now?
I live in Denver now,
Oh, cool.
so it's like I don't see tons
It's
of
a very
churches everywhere. Like
it's a very
people,
different vibe.
yeah, people don't really talk about like going to church on Sundays, whereas like back home it was just like you just assume most people kind of did. Um, but yeah, I live in the city I live in now is. Are you familiar with the Elijah McClain thing at all?
No, no.
Oh, he was a black kid that got killed by the police here a little over a year ago, but
Oh,
it kind of blew up this past summer. There was a lot of protests. The national media was covering it quite a bit. It kind of became a trending thing nationally.
oh, that was right there.
Yeah, it was. So I live. That's where I live now. Is in the city where that happened. I've lived here
Oh,
for about 4 years, and it's got a lot of immigrants from all over the world. A lot of diversity. So it's completely different from where I grew up, and I don't know. It's weird. Like I go home and visit once a year or so. When I do, it's just I don't know. It's so weird because it's like on one hand, there's so much I don't like about home, but on the other hand, there's I don't know. Growing up in a small town is just completely different than living in like large cities. Because I mean, ever since I went to college, I mean, Lafayette's a city, a town of like 100,000 or so. I mean,
maybe.
yeah, around there.
It doesn't feel like it's that many people, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Lafayette's like 80 and West Lafayette's maybe like 20. So, but they're separated by that river, but they kind of feel like one town for the most part, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that was like the biggest place I'd ever lived when I went there. And then after college, I lived in Dallas for a little while, and I lived in Baltimore for a couple years, and lived in Los Angeles. And it's like you really see that's like a whole nother world out there. When you grow up in Indiana, it kind of feels like one, I don't know, you're like living in a tiny little fishbowl, and then there's a whole ocean out there. But a
Yeah.
lot of people from my hometown just never ever leave my hometown to experience much beyond that.
I had that similar experience. I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and so my area was a deprived sort of steel city. It was sort of left for dead when all the mills closed. So it was
Oh, okay.
ESPN did specials on Aliquippa
Oh, wow.
about how many people get up and leave to go to the NFL, or like they've got a great athletic program at the high school, but
Yeah.
there ain't much else going on. So it's the guys. A lot of people try to get really good at something so they can leave it.
Yeah.
Um, and so there are comforts of going home, but it is very much sort of the same. You got one side that is very mixed. The people who moved there for the steel boom,
Hmm.
and then you've got sort of the rural farm area around Aliquippa that is very very redneck and very much like what you described, in your hometown.
Yeah.
And so you could tell there's one big road that drives down the middle of the city. I shouldn't say the middle of the county, basically, and you can
Hmm.
tell which side you're on within a block.
Hmm.
and so their comforts of going home, where my mom and brother live, but beyond that, it's not. It is a place that I don't feel is much of a home anymore. After living in a lot of other places, and there are a lot of people I grew up with that have never left.
Yeah.
In fact, some of them have never been within 100, like past 100 miles from that area. So it's sort of baffling to see. You understand how the train of thought just sort of cycles back through the generations because they've never got any outside influence, right? It's sort of like, ugh. Um, so you have the comforts of what home was growing up, but you also have this now that you've been other places, especially like Dallas, where there's a mixing pot of a lot of things. I mean, even the architecture in Dallas is weird because you look around, you're like, none of these buildings look like they belong
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. Yeah. Dallas is such a weird. I've never seen anywhere else in America that's like so just spread out like that. Like it feels like you could drive for 4 hours and still be in the Dallas metroplex area.
I think you can. I lived in Houston, and Houston was a long, you could drive around it
Yeah.
for about 6 hours and not actually leave the city. It was pretty
Wow.
wild. Um,
'Cause
but it's a pretty heavy melting pot,
you lived in Dallas, right? You said.
right? Houston.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. Okay, I was gonna because my
I
sister lives north of Dallas, like in the Frisco northern
Oh
suburbs. And I
yeah,
always joke with her. I'm like, man, Dallas is pretty much Oklahoma at this point. Like,
it's. I mean, they're very similar. Like I worked on a couple of buildings in Dallas. I've been to Dallas many times.
yeah,
And so I like the city. It's got its idiosyncrasies, sort of like Dallas and Houston, and Austin all were very different compared to the rest of Texas.
yeah.
And as soon as you get outside the like metropolitan areas, it changes very, very quickly.
Oh yeah.
Houston was one though, like uh, you start at one end of the city and start driving north, and you just keep going. You're like, man, we're still in Houston. It's been literally 2 hours.
That sounds
Man,
like welcome to Canada. What?
yeah, right. Like it's crazy. But seeing sort of the outside influence when you get all that mix of people, it's like living. Indiana was very weird because when I said, I should say you said it's like stepping back in time was your hometown.
Yeah.
Before I got to Purdue, I was living in Lexington, Kentucky,
Okay.
um, and I got my undergrad in Kentucky, and I stayed there for a couple years, and then I got I got accepted to Purdue for my master's, so I moved. We had just passed a smoking ban in Lexington like 2 years before,
Mhm.
and so we got used to it. Like
Yeah.
no place like smelling like smoke and
Oh, you
bars,
came up and we still had
whatever.
the smoke. The smoke was
And what?
loud.
Yeah, and when I moved to Indiana, the first like I was just trying to find some place to watch football.
Yeah.
One of the other guys that I went to school with were like, we're football fans, and we're trying to find a place to watch a game. And we opened the first door, and this like waft of cloud like
Yeah.
blew out, and was like, oh God, where are we at?
Yeah.
And we walked in, and you could tell like the people sitting in this little like bar in Lafayette like turned and looked at us. It was weird because it was like the Animal House scene where they walk in and know they're in the wrong bar, except we're all white, and like
Yeah.
me and my buddy's white. We both walked in, and like we could see people look at us. They were like, "You don't belong here."
Yeah. You ain't from around here.
Yeah, it's just like, but you could like the smell. It's something that you hadn't smelled in 2 years, and then you
Oh,
walk in. The first, it's like, oof.
I,
Oh, it's gonna be like this,
I,
huh? Okay.
I know the smell you're talking about because I smell it every time I go home to visit my dad. Yeah, which is funny that you mentioned the smoking ban because I remember um, I was in college at the time. I don't remember what year that was or what year in school I was, but my dad is a smoker, lifelong smoker, indoor smoker to this day. Like almost everybody I know that still smokes, at least they smoke outside. Um,
Yeah, I go on the porch or
yeah,
like New York. In New York here, we see people on their fire escape.
yeah,
Like
not
they
my
don't really
dad.
want to walk downstairs, so they'll sort of like stick their head out the window.
Yeah, not my dad. Still smoking in the house with the windows closed. So it's the whole house just reeks of smoke. But and growing up with my dad smoking in the house, I didn't know that my entire life, like all throughout high school, middle school, elementary school, I was going to school smelling like smoke. all day, every day. And I had no idea because I was just grew up in it. So I didn't know that it was that bad until I went away to Purdue. I came back home from Purdue on my first fall break or whatever it was, stayed at home with my dad for a few days, went back to school. And when I was taking my clothes out of my bag to do laundry, I was like, why did my clothes just reek of smoke? What the hell? So I was telling one of my friends from high school that, and he was like, yeah, dude, you used to smell like smoke all the time. You didn't know that? I was like, no wonder some of my coaches thought I was a troublemaker because I was coming to practice smelling like cigarette smoke.
No, they're not mine. They're dad's. Seriously.
And I never smoke. Like I've always hated cigarettes, and like just the smell of it just disgusts me. So I've never been a smoker. But when that smoking ban was like happening, I was just like, oh, this makes perfect sense. This is amazing. We need to make this happen because I'm tired of going home from the club or the bar every night smelling like smoke. And my dad was trying to say it was a violation of his rights. I was like, come on, Dad, what are you talking
Oh
about?
dear. Yeah.
But I think he's come around. He doesn't complain about it anymore, but he did try making that argument when they passed it.
Yeah, Lexington had a lot of all of a sudden private clubs where you paid $1, and
Oh yeah,
and you got your like pass, get your free dollar off your first drink or whatever ticket to be a member and
man.
stuff like that. But I just you got used to not having it. It wasn't in
Yeah.
any place like, and I was a stagehand, so I worked in a lot of places, concerts and whatnot, and
Oh yeah.
it's sort of interesting to see the place is clean,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Uh,
these kids today that are just really have no idea like the misery that we had to go through and our
no.
just to go have fun, drink, and try to hit on girls. Like they don't know.
Oh man, yeah,
Oh
that was weird to see it 2 years later and just like, where are we at?
yeah, man.
I
That
mean, Indiana wasn't all bad. I shouldn't say it. It was so weird to move to a place that I I did not feel I was accepted just as a person, and it wasn't like anything I'd ever done. I literally just showed up and was like, I'm no, like I live here, I work here, I'm trying to like spend money here.
yeah.
It's, it's
Yeah,
very
I
odd.
understand. And on behalf of my fellow Hoosiers, I apologize for that. We're usually known for being a little more friendly and down home on all that stuff, but you know, some places just run into a bad crowd, I guess.
My
Unfortunately, we are out of time, so we need to wrap this up and end this. But that was our conversation about Indiana. Feel free to come visit and judge it for yourself. And hopefully, we'll talk to you guys again later. Bye.
bye.
Okay, I think that stopped it. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, no.
Who knew the Chris's had so much in common, including Indiana, but they could also talk about various places of the United States with such clarity. Thanks so much, guys. That's it for us, folks. Catch us next week for a brand new episode with brand new contributors. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at WannaCoffeePod. That's WannaCoffeePod. I'm your host, Kai, and let's wanna coffee next week. Cheers. Oh my god! Orange is not my new black.